I'm Ingrid Thornton, I'm 26 years old, and for 2 full years, every single employer in my town believed I was a thief, not because I stole anything, not because I had a record, not because there was proof, but because my father told them I was. And in a town where my father's name was stamped on half the buildings, his word carried more weight than mine ever could. For 2 years, I couldn't get hired anywhere, not at the regional bank, not at the accounting firm downtown, not even at the credit union that trained interns straight out of college. I graduated with a 3.9 GPA in accounting. Dean's list every semester, glowing letters of recommendation. None of it mattered, because behind every polite rejection email, behind every warm handshake that turned cold, there was a phone call, and on the other end of that call was Gerald Thornton, my father, telling them I had stolen $1,200 from my own family, telling them I couldn't be trusted with money, telling them they would regret hiring me. He called it teaching me respect. He thought 2 years of rejection would break me. He thought watching me scrub hotel toilets while he laughed from across a white tablecloth would make me crawl back home. He didn't know about the envelope. He didn't know what my grandmother had done 15 years earlier. And he definitely didn't know why the CEO of Mercer Holdings had been waiting for me. But before any of that happened, before the gala, before the shares, before the truth finally surfaced, there was the moment I realized my own parents had declared war on me, and that moment changed everything. From the outside, the Thornton family looked untouchable. My father owned the largest construction company in the county. Thornton Construction had built the courthouse, the medical center, 3 shopping plazas. Our 2-story colonial sat on 3 acres of perfectly trimmed lawn, my father's Mercedes in the garage, my mother's Lexus beside it, and my brother Marcus's BMW, a graduation gift for finishing business school. We looked successful, polished, stable, but inside that house there were rules no one said out loud. My brother Marcus was the heir, the golden child, 4 years older than me, groomed since childhood to take over the company. When he wanted to study abroad in London, Dad wrote the check without blinking. When I asked about the same program 2 years later, my father laughed. What for? You'll get married eventually. Save me the money. That was the first time I understood something I wouldn't fully articulate until years later. In my father's world, sons built legacies. Daughters were assets. I went to the state university 40 minutes away. Lived at home, commuted, at family dinners, conversation orbited Marcus. His projects, his promotions, his future. Dad carved the roast, dispensed advice. A man builds his legacy through his work. He always pointed the fork at Marcus when he said it. Never at me. When I was 16, I overheard something I never forgot. Dad and Mom were in the kitchen, voices low. I'd paused in the hallway. Daughters don't need to achieve, he said. They need to learn how to keep a home. Ingrid will marry well, that's her job. I stood there frozen. That was the moment I stopped trying to impress him. I just didn't know it yet. The summer before college, my parents gave me a credit card. For necessities, Mom said gently, sliding it across the table. Dad nodded from behind his newspaper. Don't go crazy. I didn't. Textbooks. A used laptop from the campus sale. Calculators, supplies. 3 months later, the total was $1,200. When the statement arrived, Dad exploded. He slammed the paper on the dining table. Who gave you permission to spend this much? You did, I said quietly. He stood. You'll pay back every cent, or you can find somewhere else to live. I paid it back. 2 part-time jobs, library, coffee shop, 8 months, every dollar, every receipt. But the damage wasn't financial. Working 25 hours a week meant I couldn't take full course loads. My degree stretched to 6 years instead of 4, 2 extra years of tuition, 2 extra years of commuting, 2 extra years of being reminded I was a burden. I thought that was the lesson. I thought it ended there. It didn't, because my father had a long memory, and he knew exactly how to weaponize it. The only person who ever made me feel seen was my grandmother, Margaret Hayes. She wasn't soft. She built a furniture empire from a single showroom in 1972, expanded to 11 locations, sold the chain at 65, retired wealthy, sharp, practical, observant. She saw everything, including what was happening inside her daughter's marriage. When I was 15, we sat on her porch watching the sunset. She took my hand. Ingrid, she said quietly, I've already prepared for your future. I laughed. Prepared what? She looked toward the garden. When the time comes, you'll know. I didn't understand. Not then. 3 years ago, she passed away. I thought she'd left small, sentimental gifts like Dad said. I didn't know she'd left me something else, something he could never touch. I graduated summa cum laude, 3.9 GPA, accounting degree. For the first time, I had something that belonged to me. At graduation, my family attended. But when my name was called, they were talking. Marcus laughing about something, Dad leaning toward him, Mom nodding. No one stood, no one clapped. Afterward, Dad found me in the parking lot. "Come work for the company," he said. "Unpaid for the first year. Live at home. Learn under Marcus." I told him I wanted to try on my own first. His eyes changed. "Fine," he said softly. "Try it your way." That was the day he decided to crush me. I just didn't realize it yet. The rejections started within weeks. 15 applications, 15 interviews, 15 polite emails. Then the HR manager at Patterson Financial told me something she probably shouldn't. "You should talk to your father." That night, I confronted him. He didn't deny it. "I told them the truth," he said calmly, "that you stole from us. I paid it back. That's not how I remember it." Then he leaned forward. "You turned down my offer. You thought you could make it without me. Maybe now you understand you can't." And that was it. He blacklisted me on purpose to force me home, to break me. Within weeks, the whispers spread at church, at the grocery store, at the dry cleaners. Such a shame. They tried to help her. She just wouldn't listen. In a small town, narrative is power, and my father controlled the narrative. Marcus mocked me in public. "Careful, she'll steal your wallet." I watched my savings shrink. $3,000 2 months before I'd be broke, and then I applied to the Willow Inn. Housekeeping, minimum wage, night shifts, no references required. Linda, the manager, didn't care about rumors. "Show up on time and do your job," she said. So I did. I scrubbed toilets, changed sheets, avoided eye contact with people who used to congratulate me, but I survived, and my father couldn't take that from me. 6 months into the job, my family came to dinner at the hotel restaurant. I saw them before they saw me. Charcoal suit, pearls, Rolex. My father spotted me pushing a cleaning cart. His face split into a grin. "Well, well," he said loudly, "maybe now you'll learn to respect us." The restaurant turned to look. Marcus laughed. I turned around and kept walking, but something inside me hardened. I remembered Grandma's words. "When the time comes, you'll know." I just didn't know what the time meant yet, until the day I found the old voicemail, the one from the lawyer, the one my father told them I wasn't interested in, and that was when everything began to shift. 3 weeks after my family humiliated me at the Willow Inn, I was sitting on the floor of my tiny apartment sorting through a cardboard box labeled college. I wasn't being nostalgic. I was desperate. When money gets tight, sentiment disappears fast. Old textbooks could be sold, electronics traded in. Even childhood keepsakes start looking like rent payments. The apartment smelled faintly of instant noodles dinner for the third night in a row, and the radiator clicked loudly against the cold. That's when I found the phone. My old one, cracked screen, dead battery, forgotten. For reasons I still can't explain, I plugged it in. The screen flickered, then lit up. Notifications flooded in. Old texts, spam emails, and one voicemail 3 years old, left just days after my grandmother died. My heart began to pound before I even pressed play. "Miss Thornton, this is Walter Henderson from Henderson and Associates Law Firm. I'm calling regarding the estate of Margaret Hayes. There are documents that require your attention. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience." The message ended. I stared at the phone. 3 years. I had missed this for 3 entire years. I remembered that time clearly, grief fogging everything after the funeral, my father stepping in to handle the details. He told us Grandma had left most of her estate to charity. "Small gifts for each grandchild," he'd said dismissively. Nothing significant. I had believed him. That belief suddenly felt like a mistake, a very big one. I called the law firm immediately. A receptionist answered. Walter Henderson had retired, health issues. His cases reassigned. Then she said something that made the air leave my lungs. "I see here that Mr. Henderson attempted to contact you multiple times, but your father later informed us you were not interested in pursuing the matter." The room seemed to tilt. My father said, "What? I'm just reading the file, ma'am. It indicates the family representative confirmed the beneficiary declined further contact." Beneficiary. The word echoed in my head. Dad had intercepted it. He told them I didn't want whatever Grandma left me. Why would he do that, unless, whatever it was, he didn't want me to have it? For the first time in months, something replaced the numb exhaustion inside me. Not hope, not yet. But suspicion, and suspicion has energy. I asked where the case had been transferred. The receptionist promised to check records and call back. She never did, but now I knew something existed, something my father had buried. And once you realize someone has hidden the truth from you, you start seeing everything differently. About a month later, my father called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity can be stronger than resentment. His voice was warm. "Too warm, Ingrid," he said. "I've been thinking this has gone on long enough." I said nothing. "Come home," he continued. "Work at the company. I'll pay you this time, not much at first, but something. You can live with us, save money, get back on your feet." On the surface, it sounded generous, reasonable even, then he added quietly, and I can make a few calls, clear up the job situation. There it was. The confession hidden inside the offer. And if I don't, I asked, the warmth vanished instantly. Then you can keep scrubbing toilets until you wise up. Silence stretched between us. This offer won't last forever, he said and hung up. Mom called an hour later, her voice soft, pleading, please come home, stop being stubborn. Your father only wants what's best for you. Does he, I asked calmly, or does he just want control? That's unfair. He destroyed my career. Silence. Then the familiar surrender in her voice. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I hung up before she could finish. Marcus texted next. Just give up already. You're embarrassing yourself and us. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop and began applying for jobs far outside our town. Cities where the Thornton name meant nothing. Chicago, Denver, Atlanta, anywhere my father's shadow couldn't reach. Because one thing had become painfully clear. If I stayed, he would eventually win. 2 weeks later, I learned just how far he was willing to go. I was restocking supplies on the second floor of the Willow Inn when I heard voices drifting through the ventilation duct. The building carried sound in strange ways. At first, I ignored it. Then I heard my father's name, and then mine. I moved closer to the vent without thinking. Perfect timing, my father was saying jovially. Your son's looking to settle down. My daughter needs stability. Merge the families, merge the businesses. Thornton Construction and Palmer Plumbing dominating the county. Another voice chuckled. She's the one causing trouble, right? The theft girl, that's handled, Dad replied easily. Another few months of this and she'll agree to anything, including meeting your boy. My blood turned to ice. An arranged marriage, not for love, for leverage. For a strategic alliance, he added. I slid down the wall, sitting on the cold tile floor, bleach bottles stacked beside me. My father wasn't just trying to control my career. He was engineering my entire future. And he fully expected me to surrender. That night, something inside me shifted permanently. Fear has a strange effect. Sometimes it paralyzes you. Other times it clarifies everything. I couldn't stay, no matter how hard leaving would be. No matter how uncertain the future looked, I had to get out. I began applying everywhere, not just nearby cities, everywhere. Most companies wanted references, ones my father had already poisoned. Others questioned the 2-year gap in my employment. How do you explain that your own parent blacklisted you? The few times I tried honesty, it backfired immediately. That sounds like a complicated family situation, one HR manager said politely. Corporate language for we don't want your drama. Weeks passed, rejection after rejection. Hope thinned again until the email arrived. Subject: interview invitation, Mercer Holdings. I read it 3 times. Mercer Holdings was massive, one of the largest financial firms in 3 states. I had applied on impulse, never expecting a response. But the line that stopped my breathing was this. This interview will be conducted personally by our CEO, Mr. Daniel Mercer. CEOs do not interview entry-level accountants. It made no sense. For a moment, I wondered if it was a scam. Then Grandma's voice drifted through my memory. When the time comes, you'll know. My fingers trembled as I hit reply. 2 days later, I boarded a bus with $47 in my wallet and a second-hand navy suit folded carefully in my bag. The night before the interview, I stayed in a cheap motel near the station. The mattress sagged. The room smelled faintly of smoke, but lying there, staring at the ceiling, I felt something unfamiliar. Anticipation, not certainty, just the fragile sense that maybe something was about to change. Linda had given me the day off without hesitation. You don't belong here, she said quietly when I told her. Go get your life back. I cried in the break room. She pretended not to notice. The next morning, I put on my Goodwill suit, polished my scuffed heels, and practiced interview answers until my voice steadied. Tell me about yourself. Why Mercer Holdings? Explain the employment gap. None of the answers felt perfect. But perfection was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. As I walked toward the towering glass building, my phone rang. Dad, I nearly ignored it, but instinct told me to answer. I hear you have an interview today, he said flatly. My stomach dropped. How do you know that? Marcus follows your social media, very careless tagging the bus station. One harmless post, that was all it took. I know people in finance, he continued calmly. One phone call is all it takes. My chest tightened. You wouldn't. Come home now and stop this foolishness. Last chance. Then a text from Marcus appeared. You're done, sis. Dad already called them. Enjoy the bus ride home. I stood 50 feet from the building that might save my life, wondering if it had already been destroyed, but I had come too far to turn back. I silenced my phone, straightened my blazer, and walked inside. Whatever waited for me, I would face it standing up. The lobby was breathtaking. marble floors reflecting sunlight, three-story ceilings, executives moving with effortless confidence. I felt very small in my thrift store suit. At reception, I gave my name. The woman typed, then looked up. "Yes, Miss Thornton, Mr. Mercer is expecting you. Please take the private elevator to the 26th floor." The CEO's floor, my pulse thundered. This wasn't normal. Nothing about this was normal. The elevator opened into a quiet reception area lined with original artwork and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. An assistant greeted me. "He's been expecting you for a long time," she said gently. Expecting me. Before I could ask what she meant, she opened the door, and my life split into two halves, before that door and after it. Daniel Mercer stood by the window when I entered, silver at his temples, impeccable suit, but what struck me most wasn't his presence. It was his expression. He looked at me, like he had been waiting years for this exact moment. "Miss Thornton," he said warmly, "please sit." Then he walked to a wall safe and removed a thick yellowed envelope sealed with wax. He placed it in my shaking hands. On the front, in unmistakable handwriting, were the words, "Only to be opened when Margaret Hayes has passed away and her granddaughter, Ingrid Thornton, comes to Mercer Holdings." The date beneath it was 15 years old. I was 11 when she wrote it. Daniel spoke softly. "Your grandmother saved my company 20 years ago. She made me promise that someday, when you came here, I would give you this." My vision blurred. Grandma knew. She had always known. And as I broke the seal, I realized something with absolute clarity. My father had spent 2 years trying to trap me. But 15 years earlier, my grandmother had already built the exit. My hands were trembling so badly I had to place the envelope on Daniel Mercer's desk before I could open it. The wax seal cracked softly under my thumb, a sound so small, yet it seemed to echo through the massive office. For a second, I just stared at the contents, because inside that envelope was proof that my grandmother had been planning my freedom long before I even understood I needed saving. There were 3 items. The first was a handwritten letter on thick cream stationery. The second was an official notarized certificate. And the third was a small leather journal, worn at the edges as if it had been opened hundreds of times. I picked up the certificate first. At a glance, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Then the words settled into place. Certificate of Stock Ownership, Ingrid Marie Thornton, founding stake, Mercer Holdings 8%, 8%. I read it again, then again. My throat went dry. "I don't understand," I whispered. Daniel pulled his chair slightly closer, his voice calm, almost gentle. "When your grandmother invested in my company 20 years ago, she insisted the shares not be placed in her name." He paused. "She placed them in a trust for you." My heart slammed once against my ribs, hard enough that I felt it. "But I was a child." "You were 6, he confirmed. "She believed that one day you might need something no one could take from you." The room felt suddenly too large. Too bright, too unreal. Why didn't anyone tell me? The trust was structured to remain silent until either Margaret passed or you came to this company seeking employment. Whichever happened first, a slow realization began spreading through me. She wanted to make sure, Daniel continued carefully, that no one, not even your father, could interfere. My father. The man who had spent 2 years convincing an entire town I was worthless, who thought he controlled every door I could walk through, had no idea I already owned one. I picked up the leather journal next. The pages were yellowed with time. And as I began reading, a chill crept down my spine. These weren't diary entries. They were records, observations, evidence. October 1998, Gerald screamed at Diane over household spending. Diane cried for 2 hours. March 2002, Gerald refused to pay for Ingrid's piano lessons, called them a waste of money for a girl. June 2008, Gerald forbade Ingrid from applying to out-of-state colleges. Women don't need expensive degrees. Page after page, year after year, my grandmother had been watching, quietly documenting the shape of the cage forming around me. "You see," Daniel said softly, "your grandmother understood your father better than anyone. She couldn't stop him directly, so she prepared a counterweight." I swallowed hard. She hadn't just loved me, she had protected me strategically. Deliberately, long before I ever realized I might need protection. Finally, I unfolded the letter. The paper trembled slightly in my grip. "My dearest Ingrid, if you're reading this, then I am gone, and you have found your way to the place I hoped you would." My vision blurred almost immediately. "I want you to understand why I did what I did. I watched your mother marry Gerald Thornton. I saw the control from the beginning, the cruelty disguised as discipline, the way he diminished everyone around him so he could feel powerful. My chest tightened. I begged your mother to leave. She refused. She believed she could fix him. I could not save my daughter, but I swore I would save you." Tears slipped silently down my face. I didn't wipe them away. From the moment you were born, I saw something in you, a spark Gerald would one day try to extinguish. You questioned him. You dreamed beyond his walls, and I knew someday he would try to break you for it. So I built you an insurance policy. By now, those shares should be worth more than enough for you to build your own life. Use them wisely. And remember this, sweet girl, you do not owe anyone your obedience. Especially family that treats love like a leash. I pressed the letter to my chest. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. All this time, when I thought I had been alone, someone had been standing guard behind the scenes. Daniel quietly set a glass of water beside me and stepped out, giving me privacy. I sat there in that enormous office, crying not from sadness, but from the overwhelming weight of being loved so fiercely. When he returned, I had managed to compose myself mostly. "My father called you this morning," he said. My stomach dropped. "What did he say? That you were a thief, that you stole from your family. That hiring you would be a mistake." I let out a slow breath. "And you?" "I listened," Daniel said calmly. Then his expression sharpened slightly. "And then I reviewed 30 years of documented behavior from a woman whose judgment I trust more than almost anyone I've ever known." He nodded toward the certificate. "And then I reminded myself that you are not simply a candidate." He met my gaze steadily. "You are one of the owners of this company." The words hit differently this time. Not surreal, not distant, real. My father had tried to sabotage a shareholder. A faint smile touched Daniel's mouth. "I suspect he is not accustomed to that kind of miscalculation." For the first time in 2 years, I smiled back. "There is something I would like to propose," Daniel continued. I straightened slightly. "Next week is our annual charity gala, our largest event of the year. Clients, investors, community leaders." He paused. "Your father will be there." My pulse quickened. "He invited himself. He's been pursuing contracts with us for months." Of course he had. Gerald Thornton always followed power. "I would like to introduce you that evening," Daniel said, "as our newest senior financial analyst and as a founding shareholder." The image flashed instantly in my mind. My father learning the truth in a crowded ballroom. Seeing the daughter he tried to bury standing beyond his reach. For a brief second, something sharp flickered inside me. Not quite revenge, but close. Still, I hesitated. "I don't want to humiliate him," I said slowly. "I don't want this to be about hurting him." Daniel nodded immediately. "Your grandmother predicted you might say that." He stepped closer to the window. "This isn't about revenge, Ingrid. It's about truth. For 2 years, your father has controlled the narrative because no one challenged it." He turned back toward me. "The gala is simply light. When truth enters the room, lies tend to collapse on their own." I thought about the whispers. The humiliation, the carefully engineered isolation. Then I thought about Grandma. About the door she built when she realized one day I might need an escape, and I understood something quietly powerful. Accepting the truth is not cruelty, hiding it is. I lifted my chin slightly. "Yes," I said, "I'll be there." That night, alone in my motel room, I didn't sleep much. But for the first time in years, it wasn't anxiety keeping me awake, it was possibility. My father believed he had closed every path, but 15 years earlier, my grandmother had opened one he couldn't even see. And next week he was going to walk straight into it. Without realizing it, the Grand Meridian Hotel looked less like a building and more like a declaration. Crystal chandeliers spilled warm light across polished marble floors. A jazz quartet played near the far wall, smooth, effortless music that floated through the air without demanding attention. Waiters in white gloves drifted between clusters of guests carrying champagne and delicate hors d'oeuvres. Everywhere I looked, there were people accustomed to being listened to. Executives, investors, politicians, old money wrapped in quiet confidence, and tonight I was one of them. That realization still felt fragile, like something that might disappear if I moved too quickly. The Mercer Holdings PR team had insisted on dressing me for the evening. Nothing flashy, nothing that would scream new money. A navy Oscar de la Renta sheath dress, elegant, structured, understated, pearl earrings. My hair swept into a sleek chignon. When I glanced at my reflection earlier, I hadn't seen the woman who scrubbed hotel bathrooms 3 days ago. I saw someone composed, someone untouchable, but tucked inside my clutch was the real source of my steadiness, Grandma's letter. I touched it lightly now, feeling the crease beneath the fabric. "Live free, Ingrid, tonight I would." From a private mezzanine overlooking the ballroom, I scanned the arriving guests, and then I saw them. My father entered first, chest forward, chin lifted, surveying the room like a man measuring what he might someday own. His charcoal Armani suit fit him perfectly. It always did. My father believed presentation was half of power. My mother followed half a step behind, wrapped in soft cream Chanel, her smile practiced and unwavering. Marcus trailed them, already scrolling through his phone, boredom etched across his face. They looked exactly as they always had, polished, certain, unaware. My father paused near the bar, shaking hands with a regional developer I recognized from Mercer's website. Already networking, already positioning himself. He had spent months trying to secure a construction partnership with Mercer Holdings. He believed tonight might finally open that door. The irony was almost too sharp to process. He had no idea he was already speaking to a company partially owned by the daughter he had tried to erase. Ready, Daniel's assistant appeared quietly beside me. I inhaled slowly. Yes, you'll enter after Mr. Mercer's opening remarks. 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes until my father learned the truth. My pulse wasn't racing the way I expected. Instead, there was a strange stillness inside me. Not nerves, not fear, clarity. For 2 years, I had been forced into silence. Tonight, I wouldn't need to raise my voice at all. Truth has its own volume. From above, I watched my father corner Daniel near the bar. Gerald leaned in slightly, the posture he used when he wanted to project warmth and authority at the same time. Daniel listened with professional calm. Then Rachel Harper, Mercer's chief operations officer, joined them. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I could read the rhythm instantly. Dad's gestures grew broader, his smile wider. He was telling stories, selling himself. Then his expression shifted, a subtle tightening around the mouth. He was talking about someone else now. I didn't need sound to know who. Rachel's polite interest faded into visible discomfort. She glanced at Daniel. Daniel said something brief. Dad laughed, that hollow, confident laugh of a man who believed he was winning. He was telling them about his troubled daughter, the thief, the embarrassment, the cautionary tale. For 2 years, that narrative had traveled unchecked. Tonight would be the first time it met resistance. Miss Thornton, the assistant whispered, touching my arm gently. That's your cue. Below us, Daniel stepped toward the microphone. The room softened into attentive quiet. Good evening, his voice carried warmly. Thank you all for joining Mercer Holdings' annual charity gala. I didn't hear much after that. Not because he wasn't speaking well, he was, but because the moment had arrived. The side door opened, and I stepped into the ballroom. 200 faces turned. The sound of my heels against marble seemed impossibly loud, but I didn't rush. Power never rushes. As I walked toward the stage, I felt it the precise instant my father saw me. A sharp intake of breath, a glass shattering somewhere behind him. Marcus. I kept walking, head high, shoulders steady, no hesitation. Daniel's voice lifted slightly as I approached. Tonight, I would like to introduce someone who represents the very values this company was built upon: integrity, perseverance, and the courage to stand alone when necessary. He turned toward me. Please welcome Mercer Holdings' newest senior financial analyst and one of the earliest stakeholders in our company's history, Miss Ingrid Thornton. Applause spread through the room, polite at first, then stronger. I stepped onto the stage and shook Daniel's hand. You're doing great, he murmured. Only then did I let myself look directly at my father. Gerald Thornton stood frozen, color draining rapidly from his face. My mother clutched his arm so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Marcus stared at the broken glass near his shoes like it had betrayed him. For a brief moment, no one moved. Then my father did. He surged forward. Ingrid, his voice cut sharply through the applause. What the hell do you think you're doing here? A ripple of discomfort spread across the ballroom. Security shifted subtly. Daniel stepped forward, calm but immovable. Mr. Thornton, he said evenly, I'd suggest lowering your voice. You don't understand, Dad barked, pointing directly at me. She's a thief. I warned you about her this morning. She stole from her own family. She cannot be trusted with finances. A hush fell over the crowd. Daniel raised one eyebrow slightly. I am fully aware of Miss Thornton's qualifications. You can't possibly. I am also aware, Daniel continued smoothly, that you have spent the last 2 years contacting employers in an effort to sabotage your daughter's career. A murmur swept the room. Dad's confidence faltered just slightly. And I am aware, Daniel added, that the alleged theft consisted of textbooks which were repaid in full. Gerald's mouth opened, closed, opened again, but Daniel wasn't finished. Furthermore, he said quietly, I am aware of your attempt to pressure your daughter into a marriage arrangement to secure a business partnership. Gasps. My father went completely still. How do you? Your daughter, Daniel interrupted gently, is not merely an employee of Mercer Holdings. He let the silence stretch, deliberate, precise. Then, Ingrid Thornton owns 8% of this company. She has been a founding shareholder since she was 6 years old. The room erupted into whispers. I watched the moment comprehension shattered my father's reality. His lips moved, but no sound came out. This is fraud, he finally managed hoarsely. My mother-in-law was senile. The documentation has been verified by multiple independent attorneys, Daniel replied. There is no ambiguity. I'll sue for honoring a legal investment made 20 years ago. My father was sweating now, his carefully constructed authority dissolving in real time. Then he turned toward me. You ungrateful little, after everything I did for you. I met his gaze calmly and said nothing, because silence can be the loudest response of all. I raised you, he shouted. I fed you. And this is how you repay me. Still, I didn't speak. He was unraveling all by himself. I destroyed your career because you needed respect, he continued, voice cracking. Daughters don't defy their fathers. The ballroom had gone utterly still. Every mask had fallen. Everyone could see him now. Not the powerful businessman, not the community pillar, just a man terrified of losing control. I stepped toward the microphone. I didn't come here for revenge, I said steadily. I came because for 2 years I was called a thief, blacklisted, mocked, forced into survival. I held his gaze. The $1,200 my father refers to were textbooks he authorized, and I repaid every cent. A pause. But even if I hadn't, does that justify 2 years of sabotage? No one spoke. My grandmother saw what I couldn't, I continued softly. She understood the environment I was growing up in, and she made sure I would always have a door he couldn't close. I inhaled once. Dad, I don't hate you. The words surprised even me with their calm. But I'm done seeking your approval, done accepting your definition of my worth. I straightened slightly. This is my boundary. I wish you well, but you no longer control my life. For a heartbeat, the room remained silent. Then applause began, not explosive, not theatrical, but steady, respectful, final. My father stared at me like he no longer recognized the person standing before him, because the daughter he controlled was gone. He turned abruptly and walked toward the exit. My mother hurried after him, head lowered. Marcus followed, no swagger now, no laughter. 200 people watched them leave. No one stopped them. No one rushed to smooth it over. Power had shifted completely, and everyone could feel it. As the ballroom slowly exhaled and conversations resumed, something unexpected happened. A woman approached me, the HR director from Patterson Financial, the one who had once told me to speak to my father. I owe you an apology, she said quietly, a significant one. She pressed a card into my hand. When you're ready, I'd welcome the chance to speak again without interference. Then another person approached, then another, business cards. Handshakes, soft apologies. Your grandmother would be proud. Daniel stepped beside me again. How are you holding up? I admitted. I'm still catching up to my own life. He smiled slightly. At current valuation, your shares are worth approximately $2.4 million. The number didn't feel real yet, but something else did. Freedom. For the first time in years, I wasn't surviving. I was choosing. After my family walked out of the ballroom, something shifted in the air. It was subtle at first, almost like the pressure in the room had changed. For 2 years, I had carried a weight I couldn't fully describe, shame that wasn't mine, reputation that wasn't true, a story written by someone else. And now, in less than 15 minutes, that story had collapsed, not because I fought louder, not because I exposed my father, but because truth had finally been given a microphone. Daniel handed me a glass of sparkling water. I hadn't realized how dry my throat was until the first sip. You handled that with extraordinary composure, he said. I didn't feel composed. You were, he replied calmly. Composure isn't the absence of emotion, it's the decision not to let emotion control you. I let that settle. For most of my life, I had been reacting. Tonight was the first time I had responded. There's a difference, a profound one. Then something unexpected began happening. People approached me, not out of curiosity, out of respect. A woman in her late 50s stepped forward first, elegant, steady, her expression sincere. I owe you an apology, she said. It took me a second to recognize her. Patterson Financial. The HR director who once suggested I talk to my father. I believed what I heard, she continued. I should have asked more questions. There was no defensiveness in her voice, just accountability. She placed a business card gently into my hand. If you ever want to revisit opportunities with us, real ones, my door is open. Before I could fully respond, another executive approached, then another. Some apologized directly. Others simply shook my hand with quiet respect. One older man said softly, your grandmother invested in my first venture 30 years ago. She had remarkable instincts about business and about people. Tonight proved she was right again. I smiled, but inside something warmer was spreading. Not vindication, not triumph, recognition. For the first time in my adult life, people were seeing me clearly, not as someone's daughter. Not as a rumor, just me. Later that evening, standing near the balcony overlooking the city lights, Daniel joined me again. There's something you should know, he said. Your father has been pursuing a construction partnership with Mercer for nearly a year. I wasn't surprised. He won't be getting it, Daniel added simply. There was no vengeance in his tone, just professional certainty. In business, he continued, character eventually becomes visible. Tonight accelerated what would have revealed itself anyway. I looked out across the skyline. For years, I had believed my father was untouchable, but power built on intimidation is fragile. Once exposed, it rarely recovers its former shape. 1 month later, my life looked nothing like it had before. I had a corner office on the 14th floor, not enormous, not extravagant. But it had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river, and sometimes, when the afternoon sun hit the glass just right, the entire room filled with gold. My name sat neatly on the door. Ingrid Thornton, Senior Financial Analyst. The first time I saw it, I stood there longer than necessary, because that small plaque represented something far bigger than a job. It represented autonomy. I moved into a one-bedroom apartment downtown, small but beautiful. Fresh flowers on the kitchen table, because now I could buy them without calculating whether they meant skipping meals. Sometimes in the quiet evenings, I would sit by the window and simply notice the absence of fear. It's strange what you detect once survival mode turns off. Silence becomes peaceful instead of threatening. Stillness becomes restorative instead of lonely. Freedom is often quieter than people imagine. The fallout for my father came swiftly. Business communities run on reputation, and reputations rarely survive public implosions. Within weeks, 3 major contracts were withdrawn. Partners who once admired his confidence suddenly reconsidered his judgment. No one wants to align with someone who publicly admits to sabotaging his own child. Thornton Construction didn't collapse, but it shrank. Influence faded, calls stopped being returned as quickly, doors opened more slowly. Consequences rarely announce themselves loudly. They arrive through subtle withdrawal. Opportunity simply stops knocking. My mother called once. Her voice sounded smaller than I had ever heard it. "Can you forgive us?" she asked quietly. "Can we be a family again?" I took a slow breath before answering. "I forgive you, Mom, and I meant it, because forgiveness isn't permission, it's release." But then I added gently, "I'm not coming back. I can't live inside those conditions again." She cried. I listened. But something important had changed inside me. I felt sadness, not guilt. Guilt belongs to those who did something wrong. Sadness belongs to those who finally understand what never was. When the call ended, I sat for a long time in silence. Not second-guessing, not wavering, just acknowledging that some distances are necessary for healing. Marcus sent a text a few weeks later. "I'm sorry for everything. Dad went too far." It read like something drafted carefully, perhaps even revised. I replied simply, "Thank you, nothing more, not out of cruelty." But clarity doesn't require long explanations. Maybe one day we would rebuild something, maybe not. Some relationships grow back differently. Others remain memories. Both outcomes are acceptable. My father never contacted me, and I didn't expect him to. Men who confuse control with love rarely know how to speak once control disappears. Silence was his final language, and for the first time, it didn't frighten me. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, I drove to the cemetery where my grandmother was buried. I brought yellow roses, her favorite. The wind moved gently through the trees as I sat beside her headstone. "You saw it coming," I whispered. "You built a door before I even knew I was trapped." Emotion rose, but it wasn't heavy. It felt grounding. "I hope you know it worked," I said softly. "You saved me." The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in soft amber. For the first time in years, I felt completely safe inside my own life. Sometimes people expect survival stories to end with fireworks, with dramatic reunions, with revenge neatly delivered. But real freedom rarely looks dramatic. More often it looks like peace. I keep Grandma's letter in my wallet now. The paper has softened along the folds, but one line still steadies me every time I read it. "Don't let anyone control you with money. Build something that belongs to you." So I am every day. Not just a career, a life chosen, not assigned. If the past 2 years taught me anything, it's this: the people who truly love you don't tighten your world, they expand it. They don't demand obedience. They prepare you for independence. My grandmother didn't protect me by fighting my father. She protected me by giving me options. And options are the purest form of power. The second lesson came more slowly. Boundaries are not betrayal. For years, I believed wanting distance made me disloyal. It didn't, it made me healthy. Walking away from control isn't cruelty, it's self-respect. Sometimes love requires proximity. Sometimes it requires space. Wisdom is knowing the difference. And finally, help doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it is prepared quietly, years before you need it. a grandmother's foresight, a stranger's integrity. An opportunity you almost ignored. So if you are in a season where every door feels closed, keep going. You may not see it yet, but somewhere someone may already be building a door you haven't reached. I visit Grandma's grave every few months, not out of sorrow, out of gratitude, because she understood something many never do. Love is not just protection in the moment, it is preparation for the future. As the sun set that evening, I rested my hand lightly against the cool stone. I'm free, I told her, and for the first time I fully understood the magnitude of those words. Not free because my father lost power, free because I finally claimed my own. If you're listening to this and you feel trapped by expectations, by family, by a narrative you didn't choose, remember this. You are allowed to build a life that fits you. You are allowed to step away from what diminishes you. You are allowed to choose peace over permission. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk toward the door, even if you have to build it yourself. That's my story. No fairy godmother, no miracle rescue. Just a grandmother who loved me enough to plan ahead, and a moment when I finally chose to walk forward instead of back. And if there is one truth I hope stays with you, it is this: you deserve a life that no one else controls. Take care of yourself. You are far more powerful than you've been led to believe, and somewhere ahead, freedom is waiting.